over here. So Sharp knew how to work together and knew the advantages of doing that. And in 1972,
Would you care if I recorded you? All right. I just wanted to ask if you were okay with that.
I think
Okay.
it
So
was go ahead.
no,
In 1971 or 72, they brought in a new refuge manager, basically forced John Sharp into retirement.
okay.
And then that guy by the name of Joe Mazzoni came in as refuge manager. And they came in swinging an axe. And they terminated that 99-year lease. And my father went to the refuge headquarters and says, hey, we have an agreement here,
Right.
written agreement. And this Joe Mazzoni says, well, how long do you think a piece of paper is good for?
Oh my gosh.
And, well, this particular one, 99 years, and it's only 30-some years into it. And so he said, well, we're terminating it. And again, they could have fought them in court,
Right.
which would have cost more money than we could have come up with.
Right.
And we would have won. But the catch there is they still had control on our water and actually how many cattle we could run.
Right.
So if we'd have won, we'd have lost. So again, made a deal with them, and we lived out there by Crumbo Junction.
Mm-hmm.
And so we made a deal with them that if we'd actually physically move off, and that we could keep our refuge permit to graze our cattle. And they'd already cut it, quite a bit, but anyway, we retained our grazing permit and our haying permit somewhat. We had to haul a lot of the hay off, and which was, okay, well, fine. So we ended up buying my great uncle's place over in Diamond, and we moved there, and that was our base
Okay.
headquarters. And so we continued with the refuge permit, which was a hardship on us with the move and buying another place and the whole deal. But we did retain the grazing. So and that went along well. Actually, then BLM saw the opportunity to kick us while we were down, and that year they said they had a new policy that you had to raise so much hay on your base property to justify your BLM permit. And the place that we bought only had a little over 200 acres of meadow, and so we had to raise enough hay on that to justify the cattle that we were running on the refuge and to justify our permit. So they thought they were going to cut our permit way back. Well, we went to work in irrigating and just structure building and fertilizing, and they had to weigh our hay for 3 years, and then they determined how many cattle we could run on our permit after that. Well, after the 3 years, they owed us AUMs. We raised more hay than their requirement for our permit, and they owed us AUMs. Of course, they didn't give us the extra AUMs, but that abolished that program. They didn't do that anymore to anybody.
So they had to start
It
giving
backfired
them.
on them on that deal.
Good for you.
So we operated for a lot of years, and then our ranch was small. I had brothers and sisters, and so and just the crowding of the BLM permits on the mountain, they cut them more than in half.
Right.
And over time, take a little, and so I didn't see a future for all of us on the ranch, and so I thought, well, I'm going to do something else to make up, and so I started an outfitting business on the Steens, doing summer trips, winter trips, hunting trips, everything. But so I did that starting in 1986. But so then my dad then. He was tired of fighting the battles with the government.
Right.
Every year something, water rights or just the permits. But Anyway, so he actually sold the ranch, but when Joe Mazzoni came in and we renegotiated our deal on the refuge, our permit was no longer a 99-year lease, or it was wrote up as a regular grazing permit, graying hazing permit. But when they did that, my granddad and dad had it put in my name so that, you know, it could carry on.
Carry on, yeah.
And so when my dad sold the ranch, well, I got a letter in the mail and it says, you no longer, your refuge permit's been terminated. And the refuge had created a policy to where if a place sells, the permit doesn't go with it.
I heard that. I've heard that, yeah.
It terminates. If they can give it to somebody else, turn right around and issue it to somebody else.
Just whoever they want. Yeah.
Whoever they want, but it doesn't go with the ranch. So severely
Never made it up there.
Right.
devalues the ranch's
Right.
Sure.
the ranch value because it's no longer with it.
All right, thanks.
So
Yeah, thank you. We might.
anyway, so I got this letter in the mail that says your refuge permit's been terminated. So I went down to the refuge office and a guy by the name of George Constantino was the refuge manager at the time. And then they change them like every 2 to 5 years, rotate them out, so they don't want anybody to get too friendly.
Right.
So I said, George, what's going on with this? I said, he goes, well, you sold the ranch. I said, I didn't sell the ranch. My dad sold his part. I still got my ground. And he says, well, this ain't your permit anyway. And I said, read the name on it, John F. Witzel Jr. He goes, well, that's not you. And I said, hell, it ain't. And he goes, well, we thought it was your dad. And I said, I don't care what you thought. I mean,
In writing.
when we renegotiated the permit, it went in my name. It's been my name for several years. He goes, well, I think you people misled us, and I will have you brought up on charges of perjury.
What?
So I said, there was nobody lied to you, George. You came here, you don't know. I mean, that's not my fault.
Right.
So he was dead set. Again, I'm in that situation. I can fight him or not. And so I thought, well, I don't have the money to fight him now either. And he probably is going to file perjury charges, which I got to fight my way out of that. So I walked away. Said, okay, I mean, you've been after it for this many years. I walked away from it and left the whole thing. So in essence, they got my granddad's homestead for nothing. I mean, you know, they just kept chiseling it away. And so about 3 or 4 years ago, the tides were kind of changing a little bit. For a long time, there was hardly any haying or grazing on the refuge. Bodine. Yeah. And Chad Carges. And I said, you know, I'm here to ask you guys to consider giving at least part of our refuge permit back. So I don't want to step on my neighbor's toes because you've already issued out a lot of the ground to somebody else. But I said, you've also got ground here that is still growing weeds. And I said, you know, I can make a great effort to get rid of the weeds, irrigate it, fix the fences back up. But anyway, they said, well, why should you get a permit? And I said, told them basically the same story as I just told you guys. And they looked at each other and go, no.
Just like that.
Yeah.
You're in charge.
So, so that's kind of my story with the refuge. So we don't have good relations, but
Were they doing this kind of the stuff that they were doing all over to kind of whittle away and get basically the refuge for?
yeah, I think
know.
that I don't know all the stories they have, but I mean
Right.
the same thing. I mean they like Jiggs Barnes over here, he's gone now. Catherine Fine. They took Catherine's permit away because her husband Jack had died, and then they said, well, wait, it's yours. It was your husband's, and so they terminated her permit. The Barneses had basically the same agreement with the lease on their place, and they terminated it, and they had to move off in '75.
So they actually did it. They wouldn't recognize the joint estate between husband
No.
and wife, and
No.
none of that. Just it was by your name, and so
Yeah.
you're done. And even
Well-
though this, I believe, well, maybe I don't know that, but I mean, it seems like I don't know. you know if Oregon's like a joint estate, like
Common-
with your
common
wife?
law.
Oh, yeah, I mean, if you're,
Right.
you are
Joint
one.
tenancy.
You're one,
Joint
yeah.
tenancy, right.
But yet they wouldn't recognize that because,
Right.
of, you know.
Well, and even, if it isn't a corporation, whoever's been signing it, so there's lots of ranches that saw what was happening, so they got incorporated. So it does pass on with the corporation.
Right.
If it's not incorporated, then they don't recognize it. Even if a son, you know, like in my case.
Right.
Even, it was in my name, but if it had been my dad's and he got out, then it would have terminated it for sure, but. Yeah. So anyway, that's, you know, I've been here all my life, like I said, and I've watched what goes on, but, you know, it's, they can pick on you if they want to by just shutting the water off.
So with the, I mean, it's the same thing. I mean, that's what we've been hearing. I mean, you have some pretty blatant examples. And with the Hammonds, I mean, what do you know? Interesting, you know, stepping away and hearing it from a local that would know. There's lots of people that think they know, but like that would actually know. What do you know about like the Hammond situation?
Well, and I'll say this right up front, me and the Hammonds don't exactly see eye to eye. I mean, we've had our differences over this and that, so I'm not like they're my best buddies that I'm defending in any way. But,
Sure.
We'll get an honest take on it then.
Yeah, you will. So yeah, I mean, we've had our outs. What they're actually in jail for right now is ridiculous. It's basically a little over 100 acres of fire they got on public land. And, you know, they were doing a management burn on their place and it got off, and they probably should have paid better attention to what was going to happen, but it happened. And I don't think it was intentional by any means.
Right.
And in each year, we have thousands of acres burnt by so-called firefighters of our own private land, and our cattle and livestock burnt, and there's no accountability there.
Right.
And it's intentional.
Right.
They light it intentionally. We can get onto that subject later, but so as far as the Hammonds,
Well, you know, your video got pretty popular.
yeah, well, we should get more popular.
Yeah.
You know, we tried to get this whole event and the long draw fire event, any fire event to where it's investigated. We have had no response from anybody to investigate, hear our side of the story, see the truth of what happened. You cannot get people to do it.
You have no representative in the state
None.
that doesn't represent you guys at all.
You know, we talked to the law enforcement, even our own county sheriff is not on our side.
Sound familiar?
Yeah, I did.
Our county sheriff is not helpful for us, I mean, he's not for us.
And he's your new one.
Well, not the new one now, I don't know the new one, the old one, Dave
He
Blair.
was appointed by the old one and
Yeah.
acts about just like
Dave
him.
Blair
Oh.
is kind of the one I was speaking to. But the fire event did not, the fire that they're in prison for right now isn't what they went after them for originally. There was a fire that started right out my window over here, and I saw the lightning strike. Southwest wind, the fire's gonna burn off through the rock piles, and, you know, it's not a major event.
Right.
I've been here long enough to know what fire kinda does. So the fire would have missed Hammond's property completely. And, BLM came down here lower and lit, watched them do the whole thing, was there. Lit the road all the way up and on the south side of Hammond's property, so then their property was in danger.
Is this the 2006 fire?
Yeah.
Really? I didn't know that. Okay.
So they lit it all the way, so it was gonna involve Hammond's private ground then. And on the other side of them, at least two guys that I know of, cause they admitted it to me, lit the fire around the other side of the Hammonds. But in the process, and I'm assuming that the Hammonds got caught lighting fire there. And I'm sure that
And then two other
had-
BLM agents lit it on the other side, on the other side of Hammond's.
Yeah, so basically, Hammond's property is here, and they lit fire both sides of them. But then these two firefighters caught up to Hammond's lighting fire, and I think they were trying to just backfire off.
Right.
Because
Fire's
the fire's
coming
coming.
into 'em, yeah.
Try to keep it from getting their ground. Well, they got caught lighting fire, so they get cited for it. And, but these two guys came down, they told me that they'd been lighting fire and told me what they'd burned up, so I knew they were lighting on that side. I did not see them do it, but they told me they did it. This side, I saw them light it. And the evidence is still there, you can see where the fire was lit too. So, in the case against them on this fire, the prosecuting attorney came here, wanted to know what I knew, and I told him what I knew. Just that. I said, I don't see how you could tell. Well, Hammond's got blamed in that fire for burning the neighbors, Charlie Otley's and a bunch of country. It wasn't
Right.
Hammond's did it, it was BLM guys that were lighting that did it. But Hammond's got blamed for it. So anyway, I told the prosecuting attorney, that's exactly what I saw. I said, I don't know why they were trying to get the Hammonds and all the cost of fighting this fire, they have to incur.
So, Papagni or the attorney came to you and and he basically.
Well, he just asked me what I knew, and I said, well, I don't know how you could prosecute the Hammonds for having anything to do with burning all that ground. I saw the lightning strike, it was lightning fire.
Right.
I watched your guys light one side of it, and I was told by your guys they lit the other side of it. So I said, I don't know why you're laying it off on them. I don't see how you can tell who lit what. So they evidently dropped that, because that ain't what they then went after. So they went farther back to this other little incident to get him. But they already had him, once the fight starts, then they won't quit,
Right.
and they just stay at it. So they had to get him on something. So they ended up taking it way too far with this little deal. But this is the one that they really wanted him on. 'Cause it was-
So what was about the poaching thing? Is that just something they made up?
I really can't speak accurately on that. I was close by. And I think there's a little false testimony that went on there. I was outfitting a trip in the area. There was another guy outfitting a trip in the area, and he was pretty PO'd that Hammonds were burning some of their private ground. Just burning sagebrush, create better forage. He was mad about that, but then also, supposedly, Steve Hammond shot some deer, and I doubt that happened. I seriously
Yeah,
do.
that's what
Had deer everywhere,
we've looked into it. We're pretty sure that didn't happen. There was no evidence. Even the Oregon Fish and Wild, whatever they call them here,
Yeah.
Fish and Wildlife, went out there. Fish and Game, I guess, went out there and they couldn't find any carcasses.
No,
or
I was
nothing.
in that area the
Yeah.
next day. I never saw any evidence of that, but that's part of the statement.
Yeah. And they weren't able to prosecute them on that, but that was part of what they did to demonize them to.
Oh, they
Right.
put that in the
Make 'em
media
look-
to make it bad.
Yeah, looked really bad. So.
Yeah.
Yes, yes.
Well, you said a good word there. Demonize you. I mean, I've had it for a long time. I get it all the time. So
Right.
anything they can do to demonize you. But in the fire situation, they're allowed to burn whatever they want whenever they want to, and there's no repercussions. This fire right here, 2012,
Right.
they lit over 18 miles. They lit 20-some miles of fire in one day. They lit from right here, clear down, basically the Diamond Junction. They didn't follow the highway once they got down there. They pulled back up on the hill, because I have ground there. And they were really trying hard to get it to burn me, and they did, but and I couldn't do nothing.
Right.
You watched that video of up here, they were trying to get the fire to go. And they were lighting it every time you'd leave. I mean, the fire would be out or near out, and every time you'd leave, move away to go again, so.
Just what the wind did take it, is that what was going on?
Yeah, I mean, the wind in the one fire right here, on the fire here on top of the hill, I wasn't actually a witness to It started on a Sunday, and it was small, and it wasn't a big deal. It got big somehow, according to the neighbors out here, and it burned up against the road on Monday night at dark, and it was virtually out. They said there was one sagebrush burn, there was a pumper sitting there. All was well. And sometime in the night, the fire jumped the road, but when a fire jumps a road, you can tell,
That's big.
because it'll start at that jump spot, and then it'll spread from there.
Yeah,
It's amazing when you go up there and look. I mean, the evidence is still there. Somebody had to have lit it off the road for a long ways because of the entire stretch burned.
Right.
It wasn't a jump spot here or one there. The entire thing.
Well,
Lit.
they torched it.
So anyway, it came over here Monday night, burned up a bunch of Gary Miller's cows. But,
How many cows did it burn up?
I don't know that he knows for sure to date,
Uh-huh.
but I think it was around 100 or something.
Yeah, more than that.
Yeah.
Is this the video that you had posted that I,
Yeah.
okay,
If
He
you
took
include
it.
all the
He
cows
took
that
it.
jumped
Oh,
off
he's
the
the gentleman
rim,
who
it
took
was a
it,
lot.
okay, very good.
Yeah, there's
we had a
cows.
bunch of cows jump the rim because
Yeah,
of the
there was a
fire.
whole bunch jumping off the rim, trying to get away from
It
the
was
fire.
pretty messy.
Oh, man.
And that video is still out there on YouTube, I think.
I loved it. That really made an impact.
But you can also, there's evidence there of foul play in that video. Not only what they were lighting when we were at that corral, but the night before you could see the drip torch lines. The fire didn't go anywhere. They lit it along the road to burn that whole area, and that was still there the next morning. The fire went out.
Is that why you took the video?
That's
Because of what you
one-
saw the night before?
Yeah. So, we found that the best firefighting tool that there is a video camera.
It's our best defense of everything
Yeah, it really
right now. That's our best weapon.
So I videoed where they lit the night before and it didn't go. And they saw me video, and I don't know if that was actually the reason that they did it, but then they went back that afternoon when we were there and videoed some more and lit it off again. And so that kind of destroyed the evidence that they lit it and it went out and didn't go anywhere. But the next day, there was no excuse for that either, because they lit it up when the fire was out. We showed that in the video, that the fire had stopped, there was no fire, so, and the excuse they use or whatever, it's, we were backfiring. Well, you don't backfire
Down the
up-
side of the road.
You don't backfire upwind or nothing, or even upwind. I mean,
Right.
you backfire, and that's why it's called a backfire, because you back a fire into the wind and
And put it out.
make a barrier. Yeah. So anyway, that's all on video. Our county sheriff, we tried to get him out to help us, and he basically, and our county judge, Steve Grasty, said, well, saw your video, but you're lying. So, the video doesn't lie, it's right there in the video, so I don't know what I'm lying about. So we have no help from our county. And so that was,
Man, sounds familiar.
so that was Monday, Tuesday. Then they let it burn on around the hill. They would not put it out. So we decided, well, we're gonna go put it out. They sent the sheriff down, their deputy down, said, you go put that out and we will have you arrested.
The sheriff's deputy?
Mhm.
No kidding.
Yep.
Wow. they
Right
just
in the
completely
French Queen
disregarded
Hotel. We got witnesses to that, but I said, what do you mean? You're gonna arrest us for putting a fire out? You're interfering with firefighting operations and we will have you arrested.
So
it.
he
It's
wouldn't
the
do.
sheriff, though, that's.
So he wouldn't do anything to protect you and your property,
Hmm.
but he was doing everything he could to protect even just their actions of destroying your guys' property.
And they told us that they wanted that fire to keep coming. And it was obvious because they weren't doing anything. They had some bad luck. We had a wind blowing the opposite direction
Right.
what it normally blows for most of that day. And so it just kept it slowly crept. And then finally they were losing their heat for the day, and they started lighting it on the highway. I got that on
Right.
video where they're lighting more of it. And then finally they lit it all the way right above the hill here, and then took it another 5 miles back off of an old Jeep trail. And so that was that day. The next day I called my neighbors over at Diamond who run cows out on west of Diamond on the desert. I said, "You better get to moving your cows." Yeah. And guy says, "Oh, well, I talked to him earlier this morning. They said there's nothing anywhere close, and it's basically out."
So
I said,
you told him, you warned him that they're gonna burn his
yeah.
cattle.
And he said, "No, there's no fire because they told me this morning that there's nothing." So anyway, I told him, I said, "Get to moving your cows." And he said, "Well, there's nothing going." He goes, I ain't gonna move them. Gotta, push them off the desert. I'll never get them back.
Right.
Wrong time of the year. You never turn around and go back with them. And I said, "Bart, move them. I'm telling you, they're gonna light it again today." Because every day, I mean, they weren't out at daylight fighting fire. They were in meetings and stuff until 10, 11 o'clock, and then they'd go out. And invariably, between 11 and 1 o'clock, they'd fire it up again.
So this refuge has a great big center for for people that all they do is come out here and burn. I mean, everything inside it just talks about
That's what that
burning.
whole facility is right there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Just to burn.
that's who my neighbors are.
Yeah.
Wow.
Fire starters.
Yeah.
Fire
Fire,
lighters.
fire starters.
Yeah, not firefighters, fire lighters.
No.
Right.
But anyway, so I told Buck, I'm telling you, they're gonna light it. And we had some cattle on ground out there too. And Colton and I headed for the mountain. Our horses were on the steams to grab our horses. But before we left, right here on top of the hill, and they didn't even get out of sight, lit it up and headed that way on the other side of that road that they burnt the night before. Lit it off, clear back to Red Dunbar's place on the other side of the road, and then started lighting down the highway here, headed north.
Sorry.
So we headed out and got close, and I'm talking to Buck on the phone. I said, "Buck, get things moving." He told me he was out there, but there was nothing going on. He goes, "No, I just talked to some guys in the BLM pumper truck. They told me that there was nothing to worry about." And I said, "I'm telling you, it's coming." About 5 minutes later, a big plume of smoke went up. And you can tell when a fire reignites itself, the tree
Sure.
gets to burning or something
Right,
flares up.
sure.
There's a little smoke, more smoke, more smoke. Not this, it's the same as every day. Big plume, because you've got a bunch of guys with drip torches along a road or something and just lighting, a lot of country on fire all at once. Buck calls me and says, "Holy shit, we got fire on top of us." And they lit it just over the hill from him and his hired man. They made a run for their rig. There was other neighbors actually gathering cattle, horseback. Colton and I got to where our cattle were at. We're about a half a mile away from the field. And the fire was just over the hill from us, about a mile away. And I told Colton, I said, "You just stay right here." We parked in a kind of an old lake bed, a little water hole, so the pickup would have been safe parked. I said, "You just stay right here. And I'm gonna get horseback and I'm just gonna go cut fences. We don't have time to move the cows. All we can do is cut fences and hopefully they'll get out." The wind was blowing so hard and that we had no idea how fast that fire could come. And it came over the hill within 2 minutes. Didn't even get my horse unloaded. Come over the hill, and it was obvious then it was a run for our lives. And we didn't know where our neighbors were at. So we jumped back in the pickup. Gotta forget the cows. We run to get out because we had other cattle and horses in another location, so it's obvious it's gonna get there too. So we made a run for there, and it took about, 20 minutes, Golden, to get from where we were at, and the fire traveled 5 miles in about 20 to 30 minutes and hit where we were at. Luckily, there's big enough rim rocks and stuff and stopped it. And so then at that point, we're scared for our friends, and I got a hold of the one hired man on the phone. He goes, "We broke through it." He goes, "Damn near didn't make it, but we broke through it and got in the lake bed." The guy's horseback were far enough to quit gathering, got a bunch of cows into the lake bed and held them up while the fire went around them. So it ended up, no lives were lost, but very scary, really close, and it was lit.
And no charges on them.
No investigation,
Yeah.
let alone charges. So that's where we're at, on the fire. and it happens every year.
And,
They-
and was that's the one you filmed? Or was that another one?
That was the one that I filmed, the start of the fire here.
Okay.
And they just kept making
And
it
then
bigger.
they kept making them, so that was later on, another day.
Yeah, and I never got video of that part of it. There becomes a point
Right.
that you are trying to survive and you're doing things that you can't stop and video.
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
right,
I wish we'd had a video of all that, but there was no opportunity to stop and take a shot, so.
So they wouldn't even let you come to court or say any of these types of things?
They never had an investigation. did they?
Never had
couldn't
an
even-
investigation. I mean, we talked to the local
You
sheriff's
fi-
department,
You
BLM.
filed complaints, but it didn't, went
Yeah,
nowhere?
I mean, it's just nothing.
Did you put a written report in, or did you just call them and tell them?
Did not put a written request
Yeah, but
in,
he-
knowing that it's not going anywhere. I mean,
Yeah,
we know
he-
where it's at.
But he's
So-
obligated, if you know.
You call it,
present
you've gotta respond.
Well, by law, he's supposed to, you know, if you report a crime, he's supposed to investigate, that's
Yeah, I mean,
that's by
the
law.
law
Yeah.
enforcement will not. In another event, what was that, last year? Year before last.
The fire right down there, yeah.
Down at River Crossing.
Oh,
So
last
we,
summer, but the summer before.
yeah, so we started a Rangeland Fire Association. We found out in that process that they cannot tell you to leave. If you're there, if you have property in jeopardy, if it's your property or property in jeopardy, you have every right to be there and fight fire. So what they told me about arresting me up here was crap. I had every right to go up and put the fire out.
Right.
And so we started this Rangeland Fire Association. Fire started south of here. I went down to investigate. Colt brought a pumper truck. Again, the first thing that they did was try to stop me from getting there. And I went anyway. But immediately they called law enforcement, and law enforcement showed up trying to get rid of us.
That was the sheriff again?
No, it was the feds, or the
The
BLM
BLM.
law enforcement,
Yeah, okay.
George Orr,
Okay, right.
showed up, and, well, there was some sheriff guys there too, I guess, wasn't there? Anyway, we weren't doing anything, except observing the fire, but they had to, and they were lighting, when we got there, when I got there, they were lighting. And they all went and sit down when they saw me show up and quit lighting. And so Colt and I investigated the fire and just kind of keeping an eye out. And when we get out of sight, they'd light fire again. So same old.
Wow.
So it's a
What-
hard one to control, but
What do you think their motive mostly is?
money.
Yeah,
They don't make money when there isn't fire. They make money when there's fire. And the bigger, the more money they get. So it's money.
I heard one of the local guys, I can't remember his name, he said, Black Earth, green pocket or something like that.
That's kind of about the truth.
Yeah, Black Earth, green
Well,
pocket.
you know, the environmentalists talk about overgrazing and, you know, the damage the cows do, the sheep or livestock do out grazing. It's like, it's been my experience of fire overgrazes.
Right.
I mean, it takes,
Yeah,
it takes it all.
that's the simplicity of it.
Yeah,
That's
much
a good
so.
way to put it.
I've
That's an
never,
excellent way.
I've never seen the cows eat the juniper trees, the brush, any of that the fire does. You know, and that's
And
kind of the
homes.
reason that we have fires, and that's some of that mismanagement, as you well know. You kept, when I was a kid growing up, there was no BLM fire. The Forest Service had some firefighting capability, I guess, in the forest, but mostly then it was the loggers and ranchers in the forest that took care of the fires too, and a little bit from Forest Service. But out here, there was nothing until the mid-1970s before there was ever any BLM firefighting equipment or crews at all, and it was pretty minimal. But prior to that, we took care of the fires. If,
Right.
you know, we had a D4 cat and a pull-behind bean sprayer, a 100-gallon tank, and if something flared up, popped up, you went out and put it out and went back to work.
Right.
But, you know, once they started, they were actually pretty active and good at jumping on them, putting fires out in the early years, but then they figured out that money thing. And then, I mean, if you put it on a graph, the acres burnt from back then, it was small, to now it's huge. And actually, the budgets for firefighting were small back then, the budgets are huge, but it just goes up together. Wouldn't it be the other way around?
And I would bet the firefighter count, is small then and goes up with it.
It all goes up. The more budget you get, the fire acres should go down, I would think. But anyway, so it's pretty plain that,
Yeah.
what goes
Nothing
on.
to do with about putting out fires, it's all about.
And I do know, in talking to firefighters over the years, they actually have made statements pissed off at the cows, because you know what happens when it hits a pasture that's been grazed pretty good. It doesn't have to be overeaten, but the fuels are knocked down, the fire peters out. So it's, pretty
That's
common
slow.
knowledge that they cut down the permits, or cut down the grazing in the allotments to grow, so there's more fuel. And that's one of it isn't to save the wildlife, why you should cut your AUMs in half. They're doing it so the fire will burn.
Of course.
That's interesting. Never like fully made that.
Yeah, with,
Connection, yeah.
with grazing, utilizing it like it should be
Yeah.
utilized, it won't burn that much.
Yeah, I realize that, but I just never put it one step further where that's the reason why they're not grazing it, because they want it to burn.
One of the reasons,
Yeah, one of the reasons, yeah.
One of the reasons is just to financially strike
Right.
people. The other reason is so they can get it to burn.
You think they're trying to just push you guys all off the land?
Oh, absolutely. And there's members of BLM that'll tell you that.
What do they say?
Well, I'll tell you a little story to do with that. I got a lot of them, really.
Yeah, good.
Like some water or something.
Yeah, if you guys want a cup of coffee,
Can
water,
I get it a little water?
Very cool.
I'll have some water too.
I'm gonna have to take him up on coffee. I know I'm going against word of wisdom.
Actually, I'll have one too.
Coffee? Yeah. Nick?
This is,
sorry, we weren't being very good hosts.
no, that's fine.
Oh, he offered earlier.
He actually did offer earlier, but I've been up for a long time trying to make sure we're okay. And
Yeah. So I mentioned that I started outfitting.
Right.
Summer sightseeing trips, trail rides, overnight camp out, all pretty much horse oriented. And as well as van type tours and just scenic tours, interpretive tours, educational type of stuff.
Good.
I don't remember what year it was, but it must have been like 93, 4,
Black Pine.
somewhere along in there.
Yeah.
They brought a new area manager in BLM. I didn't
Remember
even
his
know.
name?
Miles Brown.
Your coffee.
I didn't even know there was a Miles Brown around until I got a letter in the mail that says your outfitting permit has been terminated. And so I called the recreation specialist and said, what's going on? He goes, I don't know. And I said, I haven't done anything wrong with my permit, have I? And he goes, no, I'll check into it. So he calls me back and says, well, can you come in? And so I said, yeah, I'll come in. So we met with this Miles Brown. I said, so what's going on? He goes, well, they didn't do the paperwork when they first started your permit back in '86 and they didn't do all the paperwork right, so have to terminate. I said, well, that's not my fault. I've been a good operator here. He goes, well, it's terminated. So I had to get a little bit crappy with him. And through the course of, it took quite a bit of my dollars and time. I did save my permit. It got to where it couldn't take it.
Right.
But in meeting with him, it was Miles, the area manager, Tom Dyer, the district manager, and Mark Sherborne, the realty specialist. The three of them in the room together, and they were harping on me about how I had to operate. And they were just trying to put stipulations on that made it difficult to operate. And I'll give you examples, but it doesn't really matter. So I finally said to this guy, I said, so what, you guys are harping on us over one thing over another. I said, so what's your bottom line? What's your agenda? And this Miles looked at one guy and looked over at the other. He goes, hell, I'll say it. we wanna own all the land and control all the easements. And I said, well, I realize that, but you know what country you live in here? But that was his statement, we wanna own, and that's straight from
Wow.
BLM right there, wish I'd have had that recorded.
Yeah, that would have
You wanna, yeah, own all the land and what? Own all-
Control all the uses. And so, yeah, brushed him off, but as I started out the door, he says, we'll buy your property. And I said, it's not for sale. He says, it will be. Just like that, it will be.
unbelievable. And
And
who?
so-
What was this guy's name again?
Miles Brown.
Wow. So that came from the one who sent you the letter.
And the recreation specialist, he was just sick about it. I mean, it was out of his control.
Because he was pretty, from what I've heard, good
We-
things about him. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he's a good guy, we got along good, we had, you know, I was an asset to them as far as rescues and.
Sure,
you
they
name it
used
on
you
the
for
mountain,
what's
being out-
convenient.
Well, we did all the trail trimming for everybody, and, you know, it was
You
Anyway,
want
so-
any elk turkey?
the goal was to get rid of it, which I knew was the goal. So, I can't remember exactly how long, but
You made it.
then we got more stipulations laid on us.
Some good stuff.
that really made it tough to operate. I.e., we did 5-day overnight camp trips, and I'd go in ahead of time, set up my camp, my tents, like outfitters do everywhere. And then you run a group of people in, you take them out, you bring another group in 2 days later. So they put a stipulation in my permit. You have to take your camp down between each trip. It's like, well,
Wow.
it takes me 2 days, it takes me 2 days to get it in, set it up, and a day to take it down, and get it out. We don't care, you gotta take it down in between trips, like, well, that's nonsense.
It is not.
So I just kind of ignored it, I
Right.
kept going. But then I, got a letter, I had a sign up here on the main road, and my place is, my driveway turns off. And years ago, when I first started outfitting, I got permission from BLM to put up a directional sign, I had my name, my outfit on it, and an arrow. So, right after this meeting, they told me I'd sell out sooner or later. I got a letter that said, actually I didn't get a letter, the law enforcement guy stopped by and gave me a ticket for having a sign there without a right of way. And I said, I didn't know I needed a right of way for a sign, but
Now it's still BLM,
that was.
law enforcement.
Yeah, BLM law
Okay.
enforcement, and, but give me the citation, and I was supposed to move the sign. And I said, well, I have permission to have it there. And, I said, I'm not gonna move it without a letter that says that I can move it, cause I was worried if I moved it, then I get another ticket for disturbing a sagebrush or something. So anyway, they cited me, I went to court in
$1,000.
Bend, went to the front of the magistrate in Bend, over the deal. But prior to getting there, the prosecuting attorney called me, he goes, so what's this about? And I said, if you wanna know, I'll tell you, they want me out of there and they want my ground, and here's what it means, if I'm convicted of placing a sign there without authorization, then I have a federal violation, they can pull my permit. So that was the deal. And, so he said, well, did you have permission? I said, yeah, I have permission. He goes, can you prove it? I said, yeah, I can prove it, but I'm telling the wrong guy here. He goes, no, I wanna know. He goes, this sounds like the most ridiculous damn case I've ever heard of. They were seeking a $100,000 fine.
Wow.
And it could be 5 years in jail.
What kind of sign was it?
It was my
The
directional
directional
sign.
plan
This
says
is
The
it's
name of
right
my
over there.
the name of my company was Steen's Mountain Packers, and it said Steen's Mountain Packers on the sign and an arrow pointing, which, you know,
Just to your camp, to
my
your camp.
Yeah, it's about a mile off the road. So anyway, I had to go in front of the magistrate, and, the magistrate, I subpoenaed the guy out of BLM that gave me permission to put the sign there years ago. And he said, yeah, I'll tell him I did, and then they didn't require all the crap to put it in.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of, you know, grandfathered in, but anyway, so the magistrate, I represented myself, and I called the district manager up on, cause there was no place in the regulations that said I really had to have it for my sign.
Okay.
So anyway, I called him up and I tried to get out of him, so show me where it says this. He hauled right and wouldn't say anything, and finally the magistrate says, "Excuse me, Mr. Woodson." He's not gonna answer any questions. But he says, "Do you mind if I ask him some questions? Is your witness on the stand?" But, so I said, "Have at it." The magistrate just drilled him, I mean, hard. He was mad about it, he was wasting his time with this case.
Right.
And, so, then the prosecuting attorney got up and he drilled on him. He was supposed to be going after me, but he drilled on these guys. So, I left there, in the meantime, they'd sent me a letter and I did move the sign. I was trying to show good faith and, so I moved the sign, but when I left there, I was excused from any charges, but the BLM had to put a sign up for me. So that was,
They put the same sign back up?
no, they ended up putting a little old goal there was getting that violation so that I'd lose my permit.
Right. Right.
Then in another event, they went after our access, saying that we didn't have a right to access our property. So we fought access issues with them.
Did they try to fence you out, or?
Well, you're not familiar with the area, but this road that you guys just came across here, there's a leg of it, it's called the Steens Loop Road, and it goes up on the mountain. It's the same 2-lane gravel road, makes a loop around the top of the Steens and back down another way. My road, driveway road, is a single track road, takes off and goes 400 feet to private property. So they were saying initially that it did not have a right of way for the road. Well, it's been there longer than I have, and access to that property. So again, I had to spend my time looking through the regulations. They were saying that there's no right of way, and I had to file for the right of way, and then of course with the right of way, you got to pay the fees, a percentage of your intake of your income to the deal. But as I actually found out, my access is casual use.
Oh, yeah.
I'm not making money using the road,
Right.
so it's just casual use. So
Didn't you have RS 2477?
yeah. So
So they
anyway,
shouldn't be able to charge you anything.
no. So they couldn't. But it took me a long time.
Right.
I don't know that, you
Right, you
get
still
better
have
at it as the time goes on.
Spend
It
your
takes-
energy and leave what you're doing and
yeah, I mean,
play
yeah,
lawyer.
exactly.
Right.
Well, I didn't, actually I did on that one to start with. It cost me $8,000 to find out that I had every right to be there and go there.
Dang.
So anyway, it's one thing after another,
Right.
just drilling on you, and with the goal, like he said, we'll own your property. Then I also had a helicopter at the time. The Steens Act itself, the wilderness and this whole Steens Act, really, I don't outfit anymore because of it.
Right.
They put stipulations on, well, no off-road snowmobiling. Well, who wants to go snowmobiling up and down the road? So, even though it's just snow up there, we couldn't get off the roads. So that knocked my winter sports thing down. The helicopter, the very next day after the Steens Act passed, I get a letter from this Miles Brown again. I did, with the helicopter, I did scenic tours and occasionally drop people off fishing here or there, drop camp using the helicopter.
Okay.
So I got a letter immediately following the Steens Act, says, no more helicopter flying on the Steens. So,
Now we have a no-fly zone too?
and I said, okay, well here's another really interesting one, and this was never investigated either.
They're just after you, aren't they?
Oh yeah, well
Because every time you
I'm a
turn around,
property
they come.
owner here, and I'm easier to pick on than some people because they already had me down kicking me for a while,
Yeah.
But I was doing trips in at the Blitzen Gorge, had my helicopter, but I didn't fly in necessarily, cause I do respect other people's rights if they're going into the, kind of the back country and, you know, they hike in or horseback in, and so I typically did not fly into those areas or near them. And there's no law against it. Anybody in the United States could fly in and land a helicopter in there. So, but I did it just out of courtesy, and it wasn't even a request from BLM, it was just my own ethics. So this, I was running a trip and had set a camp up, got half of the camp in and set up, and I had an employee that was helping me get hurt, so didn't have help, and I had to run the trip. 2 days later, I had to get the camp set up. So I thought, well, I'm gonna just throw the rest of the equipment on the camp on my helicopter, fly it in, drop it off, set up, and I'll be done. So I did. I got a call that afternoon after I got back from Miles Brown. Said, was you flying in the Blitzen Gorge today? I said, yep. And he goes, well, you know, that's kind of off limits for flying. And I said, no, it's not. There's no law against it. He goes, well, no, but we consider it, you know, off limits to aircraft. And I said, well, you know, I always have too. Until I told him the story. He goes, well, don't do it anymore. I said, okay, so that goes for you too? BLM too? Because you guys fly around up there. Your helicopters occasionally. Goes for us too. And so I still had a little bit of stuff to take in, because me and Kristen, the next morning, loaded up mule. Okay, we got to go in, do this. Got the trip going. Halfway down the pack trail on the hillside, and hear a helicopter come. So we sit there in the trees, the helicopter comes in, lands at my camp, somebody gets out, walks over to my camp, runs back, gets in the helicopter. On up the canyon they go, and then they drop some people off. We see them getting out of the helicopter. Helicopter leaves, comes back in a couple of times. It's like, what's he ferrying? You know, there's no more people over. But anyway, so we go into the camp, and after the helicopter leaves, and then he goes up into the next canyon over, big Indian gorge, and same thing there. You can hear him going in and out. So I got back, and the day before he told me, I said, well, so if I see somebody else, what are we going to do about it? He goes, well, get an in number and we'll take care of it. So I get back that day, and I called him on the phone. I said, hey, Miles, there was a helicopter flying the Blitzen Gorge today. He goes, oh, really? He goes, do you know who it was? I said, no. I said, but I did get an in number. I knew who it was. It was a BLM helicopter.
Right.
Give him the in number, and he goes, oh, crap. That must have been those fish guys. They didn't know they weren't supposed to fly in there. I said, that's bullshit, Miles. You knew yesterday. You know, you knew yesterday. You didn't want me flying in there for some reason. And he's kind of got, voice got all quivery and shit. I couldn't add up why he didn't want me there. I knew there was something underlying. So that trip, horseback trip, when we got up in the gorge, we found Purex jugs. Empty Purex jugs.
Pure extract.
Are they bleaching?
The creek. They were doing a fish study, the red band trout.
So they're killing them.
So they're trying to show that the fish numbers are dropping, so how do you get the fish numbers to drop? Throw Purex in the creek.
Sure, kill them.
Dirty or
So I mean, I did not watch them dump it in the creek. 99% sure that's exactly what happened. That's what they were doing that day. He did not want anybody to witness that. Had no idea that I was going to be there horseback and actually see him flying. But I wish I'd have walked up to him dumping Purex in the creek. So then I was like, okay, so what do you do about it? Again.
Who do you go to?
Yeah, who do I go to? I
have
can't
no
call
enforcement.
Miles Brown and say, hey, somebody's. And here's the kicker. I called the recreation guy, told him about the event, about Miles going, oh, damn them fish guys. And he goes, that's bullshit. He was on the helicopter himself.
Oh my God, are you kidding?
He was on the helicopter.
Oh my gosh.
So he knew a lot about the fish poisoning.
Oh, sure he did.
was there ever any? Sorry, did anybody ever make a connection that there was fish poisoning?
Only me, because it did do the trick. no more fishing, you know, a lot of
Right.
people go on the trips, go in and fish, and it did it in,
Oh, yeah.
did it in.
Unbelievable.
So I thought I gotta do something about this. Obviously I can't call their law enforcement so I called Oregon Trout and, thought, well, maybe, you know, I get some assistance there. Maybe they know who to call, shake some. So I talked to this guy, the head of the Oregon Trout, I don't remember his name now. Told him the story and I said, I hate to say this, but I'm 100% sure they poisoned the creek. And he goes, well, it won't be the first time. And I said, really? He goes, oh, I think it happens quite a bit. And I said, so who do you get a hold of? I mean, how do you turn these guys in? I know who was on that helicopter. Purex jugs weren't there before that. Now there's empty Purex jugs. So I think that we could probably get the pilot to talk and say, yeah, I hold bottles of Purex, you know, in my helicopter. We could nail it. And he goes, do you really want to do that? And I said,
Did you pull up any, did you gather any of the Purex boxes?
no, there's still some up there. But anyway, so I thought, well, yeah, I want to do something. He goes, there may be big repercussions over this one. You cut the wrong guys, you know, so I let it drop. But where do you take it? I mean, who's going to go, okay,
Right.
yeah, the area managers dump Purex in the creek, right.
Right, yeah, right.
So, just another,
Wow.
Representation, I mean, representation, no.
Well, no redress, there's no
No
regress.
redress, that's exactly what it is.
I mean,
There's no
the redress just brings repercussions to
right.
the individual.
Well, you know, that's the whole thing, I mean, why there isn't more people stand up and say anything, because there will be repercussions.
Yeah.
Basically organized crime, like a mafia.
You know,
So you think the
Well-
community and you know, there's a lot of that intimidation.
Oh,
Or
absolutely.
I mean, it's intimidation, but it's more than that. I mean, it'll affect their livelihood.
absolutely, well, you know, you've got guys with permits out here, they're on shaky ground with the Bureau anyway, and if they, you know, if they speak up against them, then they're gonna go, okay, well, you can't turn out for another 2 weeks, you know, I mean, that's,
Right, yeah.
it's totally within their
And then
ability.
next year they won't give you a permit or whatever. When
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for them to just pull the permit for no reason.
Right,
But boy, they can sure manipulate it to where it doesn't work for you,
yeah.
you know, and that's just the thing.
So that's the intimidation, so the ranchers, and nobody can stand up against them because they stop their livelihood. That's really why we wanna be here.
Well,
Thank you.
yeah. So, I mean, that's the truth. I mean, there's a lot of people here that have something to say, but they're scared to say it.
They're just trying to stay off
And
the
we-
radar.
Yeah, yeah, there's a few people like,
You got
Yeah,
it, cut your
Hammond's-
throat.
you guys, you know, there's stand up and you say something, but it's still hard to get. If there was some way, and maybe in your,
Thank you.
You're welcome. You want some more coffee?
maybe if there's something
Appreciate it.
to come out of what you're doing here, and I suggested this before, that there be a place or a way that you could actually speak without being revealed.
Right,
You know, a
Okay.
committee or
Uh-huh.
somewhere else that you could actually contact and go tell your story. Here's what I saw happen. I saw them lighting the fire. I saw evidence that they'd done Purex in the creek. And so, you know, some way that you can actually.
Call the whistleblowers.
Yeah, speak,
We-
And
we've
then it
got,
will actually-
anonymously that won't,
right.
yeah.
And
We
then
have-
assist them to where there is some action taken. So if I'm suggesting that BLM, you know, caused most of these acres to burn, well, then that could go to the appropriate people, and there actually would be an investigation. I mean, there's never an investigation, so
that's
we
the
need to.
problem, you have nobody to,
It would change the climate out here a lot if there was some accountability on their side and some investigation.
I would imagine too, like these fires that have happened and stuff, not only you know about them, but other people know about them. So if they knew that they could cooperate with someone else anonymously,
Well, even firefighters themselves that don't believe in what's happened, and
Right.
believe in what they've done, but they can't say nothing either.
Right.
It's their job.
It's
I
the
mean,
job.
they're gonna
We're
lose
just
their
doing my job.
Right.
They're gonna get,
Oh, I hear that
Yeah.
so much. I'm just
So-
doing my job.
if there was some system in place, and maybe that's something that you can bring out of this, if there
Right.
needs to be a system. in
That's
place.
good to know,
It's
cause I,
not giving up.
good. Well, one of the things that we kinda felt that we needed to do is come in there and kinda shock and awe that place. And, give the people enough confidence to say, hey, look, you know, there,
You can stand up.
yeah, you can stand up and you can say no, and you guys have every right to do it. And to give them some, you know, give them some strength to do it. I mean, so we, you know, that's one of the reasons we did what we did. You know, I mean, we saw it, just the Hammond case alone, but then when we started looking out, you know, and we hadn't even talked to you, and I mean, we just see
It's
that
a
this place
replay
is
of what's happening
This place
to
is a
Utah
damn, it's
and
a damn,
Nevada.
damn mess.
It is.
Yeah, and
Well,
then it's the same thing that's going on down there, you know.
Well,
So
it's everywhere, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because they
Jordan
become
Valley to-
so strong that we can't.
yeah. Well, it's all done
Oh my heck.
under the disguise of, well, we're protecting the resource.
Stop
We're
talking.
doing it
Yeah.
for wildlife. It's like, bullshit.
yeah, it is.
It doesn't make any difference whether I own land there or not to do with the wildlife. Actually, the wildlife thrive better with me owning the land, because.
Absolutely, that's been proven many.
Well,
many
that's why
times.
they're here in the first place.
It's not just here, you know, it's everywhere.
Yeah, it's
And
everywhere.
if you can get people, the momentum built up, you just get that momentum.
Yeah, but the real problem here, and that's what we keep saying, is that these lands are not protected under the Constitution. There is no place in the Constitution for the federal government to own vast amounts of land.
Right.
I mean, they're supposed to own,
Dockyards.
they're supposed to own, you know, arsenals, dockyards, military bases, and a few other buildings. That was it in the states, and they were supposed to get the state legislature's approval, and they have to purchase it. So the federal government has very small constitutional authority to own land. And they did that, the founders did that because they knew that this is exactly what would happen. The federal government doesn't have a structure for the people to be protected. It is not made for that, you know. They're made to protect the country from the outside world. And their laws are like protecting like terrorists coming in. That's why they
And let
start.
the people do.
$5,000
do
for a
it
Syrian
here.
rep.
Yeah,
States' rights.
exactly,
We gotta
and
go
that-
back
that's-
to the
I'll be
states'
right
rights.
That's why an individual should never
You
be
really
pulled
got
up
a
into a
precedent.
federal court. They should be, I mean, they're supposed to be
Yeah, I
tried,
think it is on, there
they're
you
supposed
go.
to be tried in the county. There should be no reason unless somebody, unless there's two individuals. So the way our founders set this up, and you may know this, so it might be bad. But so two individuals have a right to work it out themselves first. And if they can't work it out, then they go to the county. And as long as they belong in the same county, they go to the county. Now, if there's an individual that has a problem with somebody in another county, then they go to the state. Because we're talking two counties of the state. And, or if two counties have a problem with each other, you know, there's a dispute between whatever county line or a road or whatever, which doesn't happen very often, then they go appeal to the state. And so then if you have an individual who's got a problem with another individual in another state, then that's when they have
Steps up.
authority to go to, that's when jurisdiction falls under the federal government. Okay? But not until then, or if two states have a problem with each other. Okay? The problem we have here is the federal government's come in unconstitutionally and claimed land, right? Well, the Constitution, of course, says that if there's any problem, like if there's any problem with, if there's any dispute about federal control or so forth, then it goes to the federal court. But the thing is they weren't supposed to be there in the first place.
Right.
So you shouldn't have to be going to fight in the BLM in their federal courts because the BLM shouldn't be there.
Right.
And that's the problem. And hopefully that makes sense what I just said.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
because they have constitutional authority to bring any issue they have up into their own courts, but they don't have authority to be in the state controlling the land and resources.
So rightfully, I mean, anything that, isn't private land, and a lot of this country, you know, wasn't homesteaded because it's just scab land,
Sure.
but, if it's not privately owned, then it should be
State.
controlled by the state.
State.
Well, yeah, but the county's more accurate though, because,
It's
I
a
mean,
slow
it is state, but it's county, the one who should be,
So,
like,
Taking care of it, managing
non-privately
it.
owned lands here, instead of it being BLM administered, should be administered by our own county.
yeah, and it shouldn't be administered the way the BLM, because what you have is, you have what, and you know, you don't have to unwind this very far to figure it out, but you would, rather than being a permittee or being privileged, as they say, having the privilege, you would own the right. And it'd be like you would own the grazing right,
So
okay?
you can do it how you want.
You can do it how you want, and the only time that you could be like summoned to a court or pulled into a court is if somebody else with a right, you were violating that right, you know? So let's say
Like they
you,
had a mine.
yeah, let's say you have the grazing, and let's say you got 100 square miles of grazing, right? Or maybe that's down there, that's not too big, but maybe that's too big up here. But anyway, you get 10 square miles or whatever. You own the forage. You own the right to graze it, and that right is yours, is vested. You have the deed to it, and it's yours. You also might own the water right on it, or part of the water right, or whatever. And then there might be a mine on it, let's say, or whatever. Or let's say that, yeah, just stick with a mine or whatever. And you, and he goes and starts to run a bunch of sheep on it or something. Well, then you have a right to take him because he's violating your right. But the thing is then you guys can work it out yourself first. If you guys work, hey, that's my grade, and he stops it. If he doesn't, then you would go to the county. That's it, and the county would resolve the issue at that level. And but the county doesn't come down there and actually manage the land. That's what the individuals do. Like, you know, you don't replace masters.
Right.
But then, and that's how it's supposed to work. Constitutionally, that's how it's supposed to work.
Well, I don't know. Yeah, I mean, somehow or another, the federal government has weaseled their way right back. I mean, we took it from the Indians. I mean, the federal government said, okay, go get your land, you know, and that, the whole deal was to take it from the Indians.
Right.
Now that we got it from them, the federal government wants it from us. I mean, it's, whoever has it, they wanna take it. I don't understand that mindset. You know, in Miles Brown's mindset,
Right.
we wanna own all the land and control all the uses.
And who's the we,
I don't
BLM?
understand, and I said, yeah, who's we? I said, who's we? And he goes, well,
Yeah.
so, you know, I mean, it makes you wonder what group he belongs to that's infiltrated
Right.
into the BLM. I mean, who's we? Yeah.
Well, yeah, and then you can't, it's hard to tell where, you know, some of these environmentalist group and the other ones began, and the BLM begins, or the,
Well, that's
You
it.
know.
I mean, how many BLM employees that are out here to manage me are on to Oregon National Desert Association?
Yeah,
And the whole
exactly.
goal is, they're cow-free, you know, no cows, no, well, Bill
That's the whole
Marlette
purpose.
with Oregon National Desert Association will state it straight forth too.
ours,
All you people leave here and move to Portland, we don't want you out here.
yeah.
All at once.
The Southern Nevada district, in their BLM office, they had a logo that said "No move by '92, cattle free by '93,"
Yeah.
and
County was
that was the day. That was the
2003.
that was the year my dad ended his permit and never paid it again. Well, hey,
Yeah, I mean, they're definitely overstepping their bounds, so how do you, hopefully, I mean, you know, you guys' statement here and your protest will bring that to the light. I mean, the media, I don't even watch it, but the media is gonna distort it,
yeah,
no matter what.
Well, we'll bring it to light. The problem is, what do we do after that? We're trying to help you guys get up there on that land and take back those rights that are rightfully yours, instead of letting this federal government continue their abuses. We can only help you. It's kinda like I said, we sent soldiers into Afghanistan to help the people that were being suppressed, and they stand up and take vote, and got their voting and everything. But what happens when we back out if people don't stand up? So we're trying to get people, that's our mission.
There is
to
a
help
difference.
people.
There's a difference in that, at least there should be,
Well,
because what they did.
because we wanted.
Well, they went in there though, and they supposedly liberated those people, but they never gave them access to their land and resources. They went in there and they said, well, we've got to pay for our war, so we're going to take all your oil and we're going to take this. So, I mean, the people are not going to be able to sort of stand up and be free if they can't use the lands and the resources and anyway. So
Well, here's one of the things that comes up every time. I mean, when we were getting our refuge terminated back in '73.
the permit or whatever.
Well, yeah, when '73 when we had to move off, and then Jiggs Barnes got it in '75. They didn't take us all on at once.
That's it. United we stand, divided we fall.
Yeah,
One
and
at
so
a
we tried
time.
to get everybody going, okay, this is gonna happen to you guys too. And the other permittees, seeing that things were gonna get cut back, to jump on the bandwagon, stand up right then, right from the start. Well, inevitably, Joe's going, well, they aren't bothering me, I don't wanna ruffle any feathers. In fact is, they give me another field, and that's how they do it.
Oh,
They
sure.
up Joe's
Dangle the
ante a
carrot.
little bit, go, you
Yeah.
take another field here,
Yeah.
and we're gonna take Bill's stuff away. So nobody will, they know how to do that.
Right.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
actually, the gal went through the Burns BLM here, started work for the BLM, and she had to go take a week of conflict management courses.
She didn't make it Christmas.
And she thought,
They're
it's
preparing
okay,
for it, right?
He's gonna
you'll
have
learn
it.
how to, if there's somebody's fighting with somebody, you gotta calm this down.
Right.
It's the opposite. It's how to stir up shit,
Yeah,
how
yeah.
to get them in a fight.
No kidding.
Yeah, she said she was just jaw dropped. Conflict management is what it's called, but it's how to
How to
Stir it up.
how to manipulate and take and then. Oh,
Mhm.
My gosh, that's crazy.
So yeah, I mean, it's all over. It is difficult to get people to adhere together enough to. make a
Sometimes it takes
difference.
a lot of screaming and yelling. That's what
Yeah.
happened in Kane County, cause that's exactly what happened with us. And I said, I saw it coming, and I said, and being a girl, it's always doesn't always help with guys, but whatever. I came into the meeting and I knew, cause my friend was the first one going down, and she was a widow. And I knew they were taking her, and I'd seen the letter that the head of the BLM had brought to her pickup and said, you can't handle this, sell out to Bill Hedden, here's his number, he is the head of the he's head of the Grand Canyon Trust Company, which is an environmental group. She gives him the number. I mean, I had the letter, and I'm saying, oh my gosh, and so I couldn't get these guys to join behind him. I said, you gotta get out there and save her, cause if you don't save her, you're going
You're
down.
not.
And then they're gonna fall like dominoes. She's the first one coming in the state, and every one of you are gonna be picked off one at a time. And they did not listen, and I was screaming in the meeting. I literally lost it. But the good thing was, one of my really good friends was an older rancher, and he caught it, and he stood up. And when he stood up with me, he was able to pull those guys in, and we did that. And we went out and they went out and they helped save her. I mean, literally they did save the ranch, but even though the BLM came in and they stole the cows, they kidnapped the cows. They rustled her cattle. And the only thing that happened to them, they stole them. Even after the cowboys took them off the range, they went out to her corrals and stole those cattle and put them in trucks and tried to run them up to the auction. And we found out, and she couldn't get through the ports, so they took the back roads. But we caught them at the auction and shut down the auction. And it was a nightmare. And we're still in court. We're almost got all our roads back, but it was overall the RS 2477s and it was all that monument crap, But we still have a monument,
Yeah.
It's unreal. But it's been battles of court proceedings.
Well,
We need to do, this has gotta be better, there's gotta be a better way to do that than you have no redress to go back and
it's gonna take some government officials though that have guts enough to say, hey, these people have a point. How do you get somebody, whether it's president or whoever, but need somebody up that's gonna I mean, we have no county government here to help.
But your best bet is your sheriff. That's
Yeah,
where
but
we need you.
he's
If you got a terrible sheriff, you gotta get him out, because that's where you're gonna suffer.
Well, we
You have to
had a
find
really
somebody that's
terrible
gonna
sheriff. I
stand
know the
up
new
there.
guy, but
Yeah,
Well, I'll tell you, the new guy is no better. I don't know. You
I've
know,
never even talked to him.
I've spent not countless. I've spent at least 8 hours having, in depth, and then the emails and the messages back and forth and trying to get him to stand. He never had any intention of standing from the beginning. He was just giving me lip service and the
Well,
whole
and
time.
again, those guys are living at the public trough. I mean,
Right.
yeah,
and the
absolutely.
federal
It takes,
they're getting their federal dollars for whatever grants.
their
you know.
retirement, they're hanging in there, they're all sucking off the
Yeah.
But you
system.
know,
and
the
they-
Homeland Security money and
Yeah.
all that stuff
Sure.
that they get to
Sure,
operate.
They shared
So they don't wanna
equipment.
shake anybody up.
Yeah, they get all
Yeah.
the shared equipment.
well,
and
that's
the-
how you do
yeah.
it. Lead them
know,
with a
the-
carrot,
Yeah.
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 Well, John, we better get out of here.
Do you have a copy of this? Can I take a picture of it?
Yeah, no, take it. No, I've got it.
We can take this one.